Many of you know of or have heard of JohnTitor, a man who claims to be a time traveler from the year 2036 who came back to the year 2000 and posted on a few internet discussion boards calling himself time travel_0. With the rise of the Mandela Effect, I began to find many things that JohnTitor spoke of very relevant to the subject and decided to compile it into this post. Keep in mind that these posts all date back to the year 2000, and as far as I'm aware are still available online. In November of 2000 John spoke of many things related to what is now known as the Mandela Effect, although he did not call it that. From his perspective these effects are related to the nature of the universe, time travel, parallel universes, which he refers to as world lines, and the experiments going on at CERN. Here are the original posts I found of interest relating to this subject. John wrote, I was just about to give up hope on anyone knowing who Titor or Kerr was on this world line. The basics for time travel start at CERN in about a year and end in 2034 with the first time machine built by GE. The basic systems for a gravity distortion system that will allow time travel. Here they are. 1. Magnetic housing units for dual microsingularities. 2. Electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity of microsingularities. 3. Cooling and X-ray venting system. 4. Gravity sensors, VGL system. 5. Main clocks, 4 cesium units. 6. Main computer units, 3. John, I remember 2036 very clearly. It is difficult to describe 2036 in detail without spending a great deal of time explaining why things are so different. In 2036, I live in Central Florida with my family and I'm currently stationed at an Army base in Tampa. A world war in 2015 killed nearly 3 billion people. The people that survived grew closer together. Life is centered on the family and then the community. I cannot imagine living even a few hundred miles away from my parents. There is no large industrial complex creating masses of useless food and recreational items. Food and livestock is grown and sold locally. People spend much more time reading and talking together face to face. Religion is taken seriously and everyone can multiply and divide in the heads. There is a civil war in the United States that starts in 2005. That conflict flares up and down for 10 years. In 2015, Russia launches a nuclear strike against the major cities in the United States, which is the other side of the Civil War from my perspective, China and Europe. The United States counterattacks. The U.S. cities are destroyed along with the American Federal Empire, thus we, in the country, won. The European Union and China were also destroyed. Russia is now our largest trading partner and the capital of the U.S. was moved to Omaha, Nebraska. John went on to describe the nature of time-space. Temporal space-time is made up of every possible quantum state. The Everett-Wheeler model is correct. I was born in 1998 so the other me is on this world line. There is a saying where I come from, every possible thing that can happen or will happen has already happened somewhere. Questioner. How is our world line different from this yours? John, for starters, the fact that I'm here makes it different. I've also noticed little things like news events that happen at different times, football games won by other teams, things like that. I would guess the temporal divergence between this world line and my original is about 1 or 2%. Of course, the longer I am here, the larger that divergence becomes from my point of view. Questioner. Does your machine allow you to control time travel? John, yes, it can be controlled. However, the distortion unit has operational limits. Imagine your path through time is through a cone. The farther away from the center of the cone, the more differences you will see in the world line. The C204 begins to break away at about 60 years. This means the level of confidence drops rapidly after 60 years of travel and the world line divergence increases. In other words, if I wanted to go back 2,000 years and meet Christ, there is a better than average chance I would end up on a world line where he was never born. The computer units and gravity sensors record your trip and you are quite easily able to return to your point of origin. I am aware that research is being done on faster units with more accurate clocks. I imagine that they will be able to go back farther with a higher degree of divergence confidence. Getting back to my proper universe is tricky but possible. Yes, another jump would take me to a different family. Please keep in mind a couple of points as I answer your questions. First, I am not a physicist. Time travel is only a tool that allowed me to do my job. 1975. Most airline pilots are probably not aerospace engineers. Second, let me give you an example of the position we're in. Imagine you live in the year 1900 and a time traveler attempts to explain how a jet engine works. Even though the invention of the airplane is only a decade in the future, he would have to find some frame of reference to explain the basics of flight. Then, he would have to outline the mechanics of how the engine works. As amazing as it would sound, the jet would be invented about 30 years later. Time travel is achieved by altering gravity. This concept is already proven by atomic clock experiments. The closer an observer is to a gravity source, high mass, the slower time passes for them. Traveling at high speeds mimics this effect, which equals the twin paradox of faster-than-light travel. However, this type of gravity manipulation is not sufficient to alter your world line. The basic math to alter world lines exists right now. Titor first described a working time machine through his theory of massive rotating spheres. Certain types of black holes also exhibit the time travel abilities of Titor cylinders. Kerr was one of the first to describe the dual event horizons of a rotating black hole. As with Titor's cylinders, it was possible to travel on a time-like trip through a Kerr black hole and end up in a different world line without being squished by the gravity of the singularity. The mass and gravitational field of a microsingularity can then be manipulated by injecting electrons onto its surface. By rotating two electric microsingularities at high speed, it is possible to create and modify a local gravity sinusoid that replicates the effects of a Kerr black hole. For those asking how come a microsingularity doesn't swallow the Earth or want to know details about the size, stability, mass, temperature and resulting Hawking radiation from such a thing, those details I must keep to myself. Yes, you can travel into the future and it takes less energy than going into the past. The computer system is connected to the unit through an electrical bus. There are actually 3 computers linked together that take the same signals from the gravity sensors and clocks. They use a Borda error correcting protocol that checks the integrity of the data and trips the VGL system. I am not aware of any physical change to my DNA or aura. I do however seem to be more susceptible to colds. Yes, you will remember me if you want to. World lines do not change that way and I will only become an insignificant part of your history. Questioner, what type of system is used to maintain the singularity? John, I am not a physicist so I cannot answer that to your level of sophistication. The singularities are held in an enclosed magnetic field. Questioner, can you dimensionally travel with the time machine? No. However, the longer the unit is on past the safe divergence confidence, the stranger the world line becomes. The unit I have is safe to about 1% for every 60 years at max power. Questioner, won't even a small divergence between world lines cause everything to look different to you as compared to your world line? John, the divergence measurement refers to the local gravitational field as compared to the point of origin. It is merely an empirical indicator of overall change in a world line. Some things that are quite different on one world line have very little effect as time passes and the world lines appear to converge again and look very similar. World line changes are not exponential, they act more like chaotic attractors with varying effect depending on their size and location. Questioner, if multiple world theory is correct and there are 2 of you here, one of you has to be the real one. Also, I find it unsettling that you look at us as representative of the people from your past. One reason I think you may be a time traveler is because I don't understand or relate to your thinking at all. John, you are correct in your thinking. This world line is not mine but it looks very similar. It may be compared to reading two books that are the same. I can jump back and forth between them and still see the same story. I do not consider you true representatives of my world line, but I do know something of how the story ends. In consideration of Everett Wheeler, the reason we don't know if Schrödinger's cat is dead is because it might have had a time machine. It is believed there is some sort of measurable quantum differences in world lines. I am not an expert on that, so I can offer little information. I would equate the future GE distortion units to their current jet engines. The first one worked great, but they can always make it better. The C204 unit uses 4 cesium clocks. The C206 uses 6 cesium clocks, but they use an optical system to check the oscillation frequency. This makes the world line divergence confidence much higher. Questioner: if you arrived a fraction of a second in my past or future on another world line, would I ever know that you arrived? John: no, you would not. But the you on that world line would. Based on a couple of questions I see here, I will try my hardest to describe what we in 2036 think spacetime looks like and how it behaves. Please keep in mind that I realize how easy it is to dismiss what I say. First, I'm trying to do this from memory. Imagine you are back in 1911 trying to explain a jet engine to the Wright brothers. However, there are some very basic properties of quantum theory that support this model today. I appreciate the fact that you are reading this with an open mind. Questioner: if parallel universes do exist, did they all start simultaneously? John: it is thought that the event called the Big Bang was the start of not only this world line or universe but all world lines and all universes that make up the super-universe. It is also thought that the super-universe can be imagined as an expanding sphere with the Big Bang in the center. Individual world lines, or timelines as you call them, can be imagined as lines originating at the center and trending towards spiraling around the sphere until they reach the edge. The individual world lines expand in length and widen as you follow them from the center. Each individual moment or event on a world line has infinite possibilities or outcomes. Imagine this as a single point with infinite lines shooting away from it, which in turn, are made up of points with their own possibilities and outcomes. Now, remember, these individual world lines with all these points and possibilities are defined by their ability to hold their inhabitants to time-like trips only, no faster than light travel. Now consider the reality of a spinning or electrified black hole, Kerr. Penrose diagrams of these oddities show mathematically that you can make simulated space-like trips, faster than light, through the singularity without being destroyed. In order to do this without wiping out most modern physical laws, you must travel to an alternate world line or universe. Therefore, if multiple world lines exist, infinite world lines exist. In trying to imagine a super-universe with infinite possibilities and world lines, I think of a room with mirrors on all the walls. You are aware of your captivity, but as you look in the distance, you see an infinite number of views in an infinite number of mirrored rooms. The gravity distortion machine allows you to step out of your room and into another next to you. The closer you are to your original room, the closer it looks like yours, the farther away, the stranger it looks to you. If I go forward on this world line, the future will not be my future. I get home by going back to 1975 before I arrived and then going forward to 2036. A few people have asked me about this statement, so I will try to clarify it. On my world line, A, in 2036, I was given a mission in 1975. I turn my machine on and jump to another world line, B, in 1975 with about a 2% divergence from A. From the very point I turn my machine off on B, I create a new world line just because I'm there. This line can be described as C, and started when I got to B. I am now doing my mission on line C, in 1975 when I discover a very good reason to go forward on C, and see what happened. I turn my machine on and go forward on C, to the year 2000. When I turn it off, I start another line called D, so from my perspective, here we are on line D, in the year 2000. In order to go home to line A, I must turn my machine on and go back on D, until I reach C, which in turn would take me back to B, which in turn takes me to a point before I arrived on B, then I go forward from the point I arrived on B, back to A. If all this isn't enough to get your head spinning. Here are some issues we're dealing with in 2036. 1. Did your world line, D, exist at all before I got here from C? Personally, I don't see how it couldn't. 2. What happens at the end of a world line at the edge of the super-universe? 3. If there are infinite world lines and infinite possibilities and an edge to the super-universe, doesn't that mean occurring events on world lines are staggered as they reach the edge? Time could end at any moment without warning. Questioner: there are numerous experiments going on at CERN. In order for them to make a black hole, they would have to travel faster than light. John: I'm pretty sure they have a number of experiments going on at the same time at CERN. The one I'm referring to involves very high energies using protons. From my historical perspective on my world line, I do recall the issue was a point of contention about 18 months ago or so. There were some scientists who thought the experiments were too dangerous to try. The time travel I refer to does not require faster than light travel, and due to multiple world reality, paradoxes do not occur. Natural time machines do exist. I fear our conversation is in danger of turning to conflict, due to an effect that is quite common on these boards. I realize what I'm saying is quite hard to swallow and it causes debate, whether serious or entertaining. It is even more difficult when you come into the middle of a conversation or a series of questions that are a few weeks old. Your points are all quite valid and I have discussed them at length on this and other boards for quite a while. I do not wish to antagonize you, however, we both know the tubular cylinder is only a thought experiment to explain the very real physics behind Kerr black holes. As to your other comments, again, they are all true as defined by the limits of space-like trips on single world lines. It does not account for travel between world lines. I have never claimed to be a physicist or an expert on what the CERN laboratory is doing at any given moment, so I feel it is pointless to argue about what they may be doing in the future or what breakthroughs they will or might have. My comments about the CERN lab are in reference to particle accelerators in general and other questions that have come up in the past. The major physics breakthrough for controlled gravity distortion does happen at CERN in your future. Heck, we haven't even touched on Z-field compression yet. I suppose I could say that I was the one that traveled in time and convinced them to change their experiments, but even I would have a hard time believing that one, and I do not wish to insult your intelligence. When time travel was discovered, there were many people who were against its development. However, once the true nature of time was realized, the resistance faded. Even if one world line was able to ban, kill and stop all time travel, it will continue on another. However, the corollary is also true. Take heart, on some world line, you have succeeded and all time travelers are dead by the hand of your followers, and thinking or talking about it is a crime. Perhaps we should all agree what we mean when we use the phrase time travel. We are all moving forward in time just by existing, and the effects of acceleration and gravity do slow time down for the observer, so the rest of the world seems to speed up around them. If we call this natural time travel, time-like trips on a single world line, then perhaps it's really controlled time travel that you are after, space-like trips on a single world line or traveling to alternate world lines. With that, it may then be useful to separate the concept of controlled time travel into theory and practice. In theory, time travel was taken seriously by mainstream science when it discovered that Einstein's equations do indeed support the possibility of controlled time travel under special relativity. Since special relativity, under its current limitations, has been proved useful and accurate in predicting other physical phenomena, it is widely believed that controlled time travel is also possible. Nearly all of the solutions that allow time travel in special relativity also have the annoying problem of crushing the time traveler in a wake of radiation and gravity. In my experience, there is only one safe way to obtain controlled time travel, and that involves the safe properties of a Kerr singularity, black hole. However, I do not discount the possibility of other methods, either physical or metaphysical. I'm just not sure I would bet my life on them without any math to back them up. E8x E8? Questioner, you mentioned a divergence percentage between timelines. How is it possible to measure divergence? John, the measurement for world line divergence is an observation variable isolated to the distortion unit. An effective analogy would be a gravity radar. The unit's sensors take a snapshot of the local gravity around the unit before a flight. During travel, this baseline is periodically checked to make sure there are no major changes in the environment that would cause a catastrophic mass failure, brick wall appearing from nowhere. The percentage of VGL divergence from one world line to another is a calculated guess by the three computers that control the unit based on its starting point. It is useless in describing characteristics of individual world lines. There is a bit of folklore about the first distortion driver who reaches a destination with a zero divergence. This would mean they had traveled on a space-like trip to their own world line of origin. This paradox is quite possible, although highly unlikely. Under multiple world theory, there are an infinite number of homes that I could return to that don't have me there. The divergence for that window is somewhere near 0.00237%. Questioner, please correct me if I don't understand. Are parallel universes created by events in our own world line? John, parallel universes exist independently of each other and only interact to avoid the collapse of the wave function for any given particle or event that you are looking at. I like to imagine it as a series of parallel lines crossed by a wavy wave. Each point on the wavy line where a straight line crosses it represents an alternate outcome. The multiple use on each world line record a different result for the activity of the particle. Questioner, multiple world theory and parallel universes have never been proven. It only exists as a way to explain various findings in quantum mechanics. Just because people talk about it doesn't mean it's real. John, I agree with you that an explanation doesn't make it so. However, you can build a model to describe physical behavior. Even if the model is not complete, its truth can be measured by how well it predicts the behavior it describes. Questioner, where did multiverse come from as a theory? Where is the evidence of its existence? John, I believe the closest non-related evidence for multiple universes right now comes from the physics, derived from special relativity, of rotating, Kerr, black holes. If you examine a typical Penrose map, science agrees that you can travel to other universes through these cosmic oddities. They can't be different places in your own universe, world line, because you would have to violate the speed of light limit to get there. Since the existence of multiple universes is a reality from my viewpoint, please allow me to disclose an idea we toss around a bit in 2036. Since all possibilities, outcomes and events are occurring and exist simultaneously, it would mean there are multiple universes out there where you are living a day behind and a day ahead of the you on this universe. There are some who believe that memory is some sort of information transfer or communication with the yous in the past, across world lines or universes. Although this is seemingly quite ridiculous, if you think that could be true, then physics tells us that the same information transfer from our future selves on other world lines is not only possible but certain. Could it be that fantasy or what-if scenarios are actually future memory from an alternate us on a future world line? According to physics, there is no reason why this cannot be true. The reality of infinite possibilities is rather difficult to get a grip on, and if it were not for the math, I would delegate it to the realm of religion. I like to think of it as standing in a room with mirrors on all the walls. I can look to my right and left and see many me's all doing exactly the same thing. If we all took a step to our right and passed through a dimensional doorway to the next mirrored room, it would be very difficult to tell if anything had changed. In that sense, there are an infinite number of world lines waiting for me to return with the computer. If I can get to one of them, I have completed my mission. Questioner, it would seem then that another time traveler that looks like you could arrive on your world line of origin with another IBM computer and no one would know the difference. John, bingo. Seems like something they would do a lot of psychological testing for before they send us off. Questioner: if you leave your world line, some of your friends and family members will never see you again. That seems like a very immoral thing to do. John: I'm not sure why you think it would be immoral. Don't soldiers today go on duties they may not return from? It depends on how you define what the real me is. If you consider the mirror example again, as all of the me step one room to the right, the family and friends in that room, and the time traveler for that matter, would not be able to tell the difference. The probability of us noticing a difference is based on the divergence of the trip. If all events and outcomes are certain, there are world lines where I do return for every world line I don't return to. All the moral events would then balance out to zero. Again, it's hard to judge good and bad outcomes, only good and bad decisions. Questioner: what's the point of fixing something in one world line if there's an infinite number of world lines where a problem doesn't exist? John: our actions and decisions are based on the knowledge we have in our own world line. Yes, the bell-shaped curve is a useful tool, but if we are capable of change for the better, then we feel we should at least try. Even if I don't return to my exact world line, a similar me probably will. Besides, I just look at it as helping a world line where their time-traveling me didn't show up but I did. Questioner: earlier you said the people on your world line would only experience your being away for a split second. How can this be true if you'll never return to that world line? John: again, I refer to the mirror example. Questioner: it seems impossible that another you would return to the world line you originally came from. John: I'm not sure I said another time traveler will return, I think I said they could return. The location, gravity map I have of my path getting here could be duplicated with a fairly high degree of accuracy. It's just that my machine was not designed to do that. I think it's a mistake to rely on the concept of the impossible when dealing with the reality of multiple worlds. Keep in mind there are an infinite number of yous on infinite world lines having completely different experiences with me. Questioner: you stated that returning to your world line of origin is thought to be impossible. John: my exact zero divergence world line, that is. The source of power for the C204 that allows it to distort and manipulate gravity comes from two microsingularities that were created, captured and cleaned at a much larger uncircular facility. The dual event horizons of each one and their mass is manipulated by injecting electrons onto the surface of their respective ergospheres. The electricity comes from batteries. The breakthrough that will allow for this technology will occur within a year or so when CERN brings their larger facility online. Perhaps it would have been clearer to state that the math has been around since 1970. I would urge you to examine the properties of Kerr black holes and Tipler cylinders. An actual working prototype was first tested in 2034. On my world line, time travel is not a public recreation, but we are all aware that it exists. You may be disappointed to know that the ability to manipulate gravity is not the technical challenge that had to be overcome. Miniaturizing the clocks and sensors, creating clever ways to vent X-rays and creating a computer system dependable enough to calculate the changes required to the field were the main challenges. There are no missing pieces, just missing energy levels and a few very interesting subatomic particles. Now for the physics, the grandfather paradox is impossible. In fact, all paradox is impossible. The Everett-Wheeler-Graham or multiple world theory is correct. All possible quantum states, events, possibilities and outcomes are real, eventual and occurring. The chances of everything happening someplace at some time in the superverse is 100%. For all you scientists out there, if Schrödinger's cat had a time machine, he might not be in the box at all. Therefore, there is a world line where you are alive and another where you have gone back in time to kill your relative. Differences between world lines are measured from the perspective of the time traveler in terms of divergence percentage. The higher the divergence, the more unlike your destination world line looks like compared to your world line of origin. Therefore, any prediction I might make has a slight chance of being incorrect anyway, and you now have the ability to act on it based on what I've said. Can you stop the war before it gets here? Sure. Will you do it? Probably not. On a philosophical level, The existence of multiple worlds implies a moral balance in the superverse. For every world line you perform a good action, there is a world line where you perform a bad action. There are no good and bad people, just good and bad decisions. We can only be responsible for what we do as individuals on the world line we are on now. After the reality of multiple worlds sank into our collective thought, the one basic change to all religious dogma is the concept that good and evil does not exist as an organized force in our lives, nor can it be used as a useful way to judge what God may think of a situation. Good and evil are personal experiences that can only guide what we do as individuals and how we relate to others. This outlook also makes it impossible for me to judge any other person or event. We cannot see the entire universe as God sees it, therefore we will never be gods or be capable of judging anything outside of ourselves. My actions can only be judged as good and bad by me and my God. There is also an area of thought that maintains all of the yous out there will make up the you that eventually returns to God. In that manner, it is frustrating to know that you are capable of and acting on all of the thoughts and ideas you have regardless of what the you here is doing. How good or evil do you think you can be? There is even an idea, supported in physics apparently, but I have a hard time with this one, that there is some sort of communication going on between all of the yous that are out there. Some people think that memories, intuition and conscious are actually attempts by one version of you to talk to another. Getting back to my exact world line of origin is impossible, but it depends on how you define the correct world line. I can get close enough so neither I nor anyone there would know the difference. It relates to the classic example of cutting a distance in half to reach it. You can always get closer but never there. It also has a lot to do with neighboring universes on Penrose diagrams, but that requires more math. The physics of time travel. Acceleration equals time dilation. As pointed out earlier, acceleration will produce time dilation. This can be observed by the twins paradox. As one twin stays on Earth, the other twin in his accelerating spaceship experiences a slower passing of time. When he returns to Earth, he is noticeably younger than his twin who aged normally in Earth time. This type of time travel should have been proven already on this world line with atomic clock experiments. With sufficient power, this type of time travel will only provide practical displacement in a future direction. This type of time travel is also isolated to a single world line. You will not meet yourself. Gravity equals acceleration. As Einstein pointed out with his SDR, the effects of gravity and acceleration are the same. Therefore, you will experience the same time travel effects in the twin paradox by being close to a large gravity source. In the atomic clock experiments mentioned above, the reason there was a difference in time was not because the clock in the plane was moving, it was because the clock in the well was closer to the center of the Earth. Constant speed is not acceleration. Large gravity equals static black hole. The next step is to find a large gravity source to use in your time machine. Static black holes provide this type of power. As one twin approaches the event horizon or edge of the black hole, the other twin will watch him as he appears to slow down. He will notice his twin's watch run slower until it stops at the event horizon. The twin moving toward the horizon will notice none of this and see his watch running just fine. Although possible, a trip into a static black hole will not take you to another world line, and it's one way. The force of gravity will crush you. Rotating black hole equals donut-shaped singularity. Fortunately, most black holes are not static. They spin. Spinning black holes are often referred to as Kerr black holes. A Kerr black hole has two interesting properties. 1, they have two event horizons, and 2, the singularity is not a point, it looks more like a donut. These odd properties also have a pronounced effect on the black hole's gravity. There are vectors where you can approach the singularity without being crushed by gravity. Donut-shaped singularity equals passage into alternate world line. Another more interesting result of passing through a donut singularity is that you travel through time by passing into another universe or world line. Please see Penrose's diagrams for Kerr black holes, or you can examine the calculations of Frank Tipler. So now the problem becomes, where do we find a donut-shaped singularity? A pondering Hawking equals microsingularity. Stephen Hawking proposed the existence of microsingularities that were created in the Big Bang. They were probably about the size of a proton and disappeared over the years due to an effect of radiation evaporation. Yes, black holes do emit energy. High-energy physics equals artificial microsingularity. When I first started posting online a few months ago, I said that major breakthroughs in particle physics were around your corner. Soon, CERN will bring their big machine online and they will be smashing very fast and high-energy particles together. One of the more odd and potentially dangerous items produced from this increase in energy will be microsingularities, a fraction of the size of an electron. Artificial microsingularity equals localized Kerr field. Through trial and error, and although they are quite heavy, hot and capable of putting out a great deal of energy, 300 to 500 megawatts, it's discovered that these microsingularities can be electrified and captured. It is also interesting to note at this point that electrified singularities also have two event horizons. By spinning these various microsingularities, a localized Kerr field is created. Localized Kerr field equals Tipler sinusoid. By using two microsingularities in close proximity to each other, it is possible to create, manipulate and alter the Kerr fields to create a Tipler gravity sinusoid. This field can be adjusted, rotated and moved in order to simulate the movement of mass through a donut-shaped singularity and into an alternate world line. Thus, save time travel. Questioner: time travel may be possible. You would not land on Earth. You would land in a vacuum of space. You have to take into account that the Earth, the solar system and the galaxy are all moving. John: yes, this is a problem. It was solved by taking a snapshot of the local gravity around the unit before leaving a world line and incorporating it into the sinusoid during travel. The short answer is, you stick to the Earth, but this is only a useful explanation to understand it, and it's not practical. Since the computer system is using a virtual reference, the calculations become flawed. Thus, 1. Based on the accuracy and timing of the snapshots, the distortion units are limited to how long they can travel before becoming unstable. 2. We must leave and arrive in areas we have prior or future knowledge of in order to avoid massive objects, buildings, water, etc. 3. The unit has a fail-safe system during travel that drops out in case of a unit shutdown or radical departure in gravity readings. Questioner: you say your machine has a 60-year limit. Is it possible to go back 60 years and then again another 60 years? John: yes, that is possible, but the divergence grows exponentially as you move farther away from your world line of origin. I could make 50-year jumps to go back and see what the world looked like 2,000 years ago, but there's a strong chance it would look nothing like what I expect. There are larger distortion units that are more accurate and have a larger window. Questioner: have the people in 2036 proved the world line theory? Is there any information you can share with us that proves it? John: the many-worlds theory seems to wrap up very nicely into current string theory. Unfortunately, we have not solved string theory yet either, but N10 seems to be the best working model we have in 2036. As you are probably aware, the big equation does not need the final solution in order to take advantage of the smaller parts that do work in the real world. Questioner: you say you don't want to affect anything by giving information, but you could change this world line just by talking about the war, or anything for that matter. John: I don't believe that knowing a possible future makes it happen. You are capable of changing your world line for the better right now. None of the things I have said will be a surprise. They were set in motion 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Questioner: my asking you if the mention of CERN as a prediction was a genuine question. Is this comment a hint about the future? John: yes, some very interesting things will be going on at CERN in the near future. Questioner: is it possible that sometime in your future that time travel will be commonplace? John: yes, that is absolutely possible and eventual. What amazes me is why no one here wonders why Y2K didn't hit them at all. Live in Peace 2001. John.